guys, welcome back to Clueless Gamers. I'm your host, Pete, here, back for First and 10, joined in a second by my co-host, Brian. Guys, we're back for another week here. We're covering week 13 of the 2023 NFL season, and of course, we will give our week 14 picks, as always, giving next week's picks. Guys, again, not a great week for games last week. A lot of not really marquee matchups were, unfortunately, just the way this season has gone. We're kind of in a situation of backup quarterbacks in a lot of situations across the league, which has led to, as you would imagine, some lower quality play and just some matchups that just weren't really hitting. Other ones that were marquee matchups that really didn't deliver were very one-sided, kind of lopsided victories. We'll certainly talk about one game in particular there. And we're getting ready here, Brian. We've been doing it the last few weeks, getting ready for the playoff picture. We see all the teams really coming into form, but all of a sudden here, particularly in the AFC East, the AFC in general in the conference, there's a lot of mix-up with all these QB injuries, and we'll kind of talk about those implications there as we get further into the show. But with all that being said off the top, of course, I'll welcome in my co-host, Brian. Brian, how you doing this week, man? And good to see you.
Good to see you as always, and yeah, kind of a wild day in sports today with some crazy baseball news and Shohei Ohtani getting 700, count 'em, $700 million over 10 years. So yeah, that I think was just about everybody's reaction. How could it not be? That's just a number that is foreign, even with, so many athletes getting paid what is conceived to be ridiculous amounts of money. This basically doubles, the previous highs. So, just an insane deal, but obviously the player is amazing. You can't say anything else. But yeah, it's kind of a shame that we start the show, our football show, and have to tell the audience, yeah, we're gonna talk football, but by the way, the football just hasn't been that good lately.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's just been where we're at, yeah, the last couple of weeks, and I totally agree with your point that it's all the backup quarterbacks that has muddled the product. We just have so many key injuries at the position, from elite level players to kind of mid-tier level, and it feels like almost half the teams have some sort of quarterback issue going on right now, and thus, we're getting some really, not great results. But still, plenty to get into, and some games from last week I think that were of interest.
Yeah, I think teams that are not doing well, that are bottom feeders right now, they've already, probably a month ago, have turned themselves toward the draft. This is supposed to be a very good QB class. Of course, tonight, one of the other things in sports happened beside the Ohtani signing. In the world of football and college football, Jaden Daniels, the quarterback at LSU, won the Heisman Trophy. And he is supposed to be coming out here for the draft as well, so he'll be another quarterback to watch out for come about April or May in the draft season, but we'll talk about all that stuff. Yes, we're not a baseball podcast, but still, to think about $700 million is crazy. I'm glad you said it. And for anyone, football is the most popular sport in America, of course. We love talking about it. That's why we have a podcast about it, right? If you're watching right now, you love football, or you at least love hearing us talk about nonsense for an hour. But to think about, if you're a parent, how can you not direct your kid to something like baseball? He's not going to get hurt in the same ways that he's going to get in a violent sport in football and have the same head injuries or lower extremity injuries or anything else. The worst he's going to get, which is not great, but the worst he's going to get is maybe blowing out his elbow. And you can make this kind of money and play way longer. Your longevity, your career is way longer if you're even a mid-tier player. I just don't see how you have kids not play baseball when you see news delivered like it is today. Just a mind-boggling amount of money over only 10 years. It's not like it's a 20-year contract. It's crazy. But yes, of course, we are not a baseball podcast. Maybe one day, but we're not now. So let's get into some Week 13 games. We're going to dial the clocks back, as we always do, to last week. We're going to talk about some marquee matchups. Really, we're only talking about 2 this week, as Brian also said, because there really isn't any great games these last couple weeks, not in our opinion at the least. So, Brian, I wanted to start, of course, it was one of your picks. I want to start over with the Niners and the Eagles. I want to look at this game, and this game was what I kind of teased at the top of the show here for the audience, was really the only major marquee matchup going in last week of teams that were 10-1 in the Eagles and 9-2 at the time, or 8-3 at the time in San Francisco. And this was kind of a rematch of the NFC Championship, but of course you had the Brock Purdy injury, you had a situation there. It wasn't really the same level of game, and it was a very lopsided victory for Philadelphia. Well, with relatively healthy parts on both sides, as much as you can be at this point in the season, this was once again another lopsided victory, but this time for the away team, for the visitors. The San Francisco 49ers win this game 42-19. Absolutely put the hammer down on the Eagles in Lincoln Financial Field. It was a game that I picked the Niners to win, but did not expect just a drubbing at the hands of the Brock Purdy-led offense there in the 49ers. I mean, Brock Purdy, 19-27, 314 yards, 4 touchdowns, no turnovers. McCaffrey had almost 100 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Debo kind of had an old Debo game coming back in this one. He had a 22 yards rushing and he also had a touchdown there, 4 catches, 116, 2 touchdowns receiving. So a 3-touchdown game there for Debo Samuel, and the defense, of course, played about as lights out as you can get against this Philly offense. Bri, you watched this game last week. What were you thinking after you saw this? And I guess the question to throw to you is, at this point in the season, are the San Francisco 49ers, are they the best team in football?
Yeah, I believe they are. And, you go back to early on in the season, it really felt like they were clicking on all cylinders. I thought they were clearly head and shoulders above everyone else in the NFL. And then they went through a little bit of a dip, and it was a significant stretch that they went through. It wasn't just like, they lost a couple of games and, it was a late field goal. No, they got beat soundly. That Monday night game in Minnesota, a place where they thought they'd go in and win. And then the next week, Cincinnati beat them at home pretty good. So the one game that was close was the Cleveland game. But,
the
to have a 3-game losing streak, right, it really kind of changed the narrative on them. But boy, since that streak, they had the bye week to get healthy. They got Debo back in the lineup. They also got Trent Williams back in the lineup at left tackle. And I think those two pieces have them clicking back to the way they were earlier on. And we've seen now they look close to unstoppable. Now, you look at this game last week, and it's easy to forget. First quarter, this was going the way of the Eagles. The only problem was Philly wasn't finishing drives, but remember, they led 6-0, and not only did they lead, the Niners almost the entire first quarter did basically nothing on offense. Yeah. I mean, Purdy was like 0 for his first 5 passing. It was like, what's going on here? And the Eagles, got a couple of field goals. Looked like they at least were going to make it a competitive game. But from that point on, forget it. I mean, it was all San Francisco. It was the Brock Purdy show. He, rightfully so, I think, has put his name back into the MVP mix with the way he's played. I was going to ask you that. I don't think he's going to win it. And I certainly think, there's one non-quarterback named Tyreek Hill who definitely is going to be worth mentioning in those conversations. But Purdy has just been playing lights out. I mean, you mentioned the 4 touchdowns, the fact that he has Debo back healthy. Ayuk has been a great weapon for them. McCaffrey, we know, has just been great all season. So they just have all the ingredients that when the defense is clicking the way it is right now, they kind of took a step back when they went through that losing streak. But when you have everyone healthy and everyone clicking the way they are the last few weeks, I don't see a team that's going to be able to beat them when it matters the most.
Yeah, to me, this is the best team in football. I mean, as you said, we were talking about that earlier in the season. Then we started having questions because we were like, is there even a best team in football right now? Because you know me, I've been very skeptical this season about the Chiefs. I just think they've looked very weak in situations. We keep talking on this show, and I'm sure a lot of other shows as well, that the Eagles are just like they're good, but they're not living up to like their full potential. Really, what we saw last year. And then besides really them, it's like, do you trust Dallas? Do we know kind of what Miami is? The Ravens, can Lamar stay healthy down the stretch? I mean, we have all these questions, but the Niners, once again, that bye week, as you said, they get right. The Trent Williams thing is a huge deal. Debo, McCaffrey getting healthy. Kittle was a little banged up. He seems to be relatively healthy. He had a great game in this one as well. And even getting Jennings involved in this game, I think it shows just the kind of tour de force that this team is. And I actually would say, you kind of hinted at it a little bit. I think a lot of the problems during that losing streak, and even other games that they were barely winning, this defense has not played that great this year. Not to the talent that they have. There's so much focus on, the offense. They have a great game. They score so much this game. Maybe they're down this game. This defense has given up and been gashed over and over and over in some big spots. And this was a day where they actually showed up, really contained this very physical offense of Philadelphia. And really, I felt by end of the second, beginning of the third, Philadelphia's offense, particularly in the trenches on the offensive line, they looked gassed. They looked like the Niners were the more physical team, the stronger team, the more fresh team, and they were pushing them around. And when you have a game of two physical juggernauts, it really goes who's going to last the longest. And in this day, it was obviously San Francisco by a mile in this one. It just shows that, if these teams meet again in the playoffs, do I think it'll be this lopsided? Absolutely not. But I think it shows that teams across the league, particularly starting with the NFC, you need to fear this team once again. And Brock Purdy, I'm not the biggest fan. I mean, I think people have known that in the show. I think he's a solid quarterback. To me, MVP, I think, is crazy. But it would be bias of me or ridiculous to say that he's not in the conversation. He certainly is. This is a down year for a lot of quarterbacks across the league. We talked about the injuries. There's no way he can't be in that top 3 or 4 conversation. He has to be up there right now. It's hard for me kind of to split the atom there of how much credit does he get versus how many weapons does he have on his team, and kind of the perfect offensive situation with Kyle Shanahan. That's a debate for maybe another day. But right now, his hat is certainly in the ring, is what I would say.
And I mean, to be a player who was taken with the last pick in the draft, the Mr. Irrelevant of his draft, to get put in this spot, that just makes the story all the more remarkable. That you have, that they call him Mr. Irrelevant for a reason. Normally, the guy doesn't even make a team's roster. And to have him be the starting quarterback and play at a Pro Bowl, potentially MVP level, that says a lot about his play. But final thought on the Eagles. I mean, in this game, they generated zilch of a running game. And I think that's been part of the problem here. They have gotten away from being balanced. When they were at their best, DeAndre Swift had really become a big part of this offense. And you look at the stats from this game, their leading rusher is Jalen Hurts. Now, he's not a bad runner, but he didn't have a big day on the ground. He ran for 20 yards. So they got nothing out of their running backs. And if they're going to win, yes, it's going to be on the shoulders of Jalen Hurts and the wide receiving talent they have, but they've got to find a way to generate some sort of running game.
Yeah, if you look at the stats here, right, 26 of 45 is that great, but 298, a touchdown from Hurts. Through the air. He also had 1 on the ground. And then, Brown had 8 for 114. Devontae had 9 for 96 and a touchdown. You go, wow, the offense played pretty well. But if you actually watch this game with your eyeballs and you sit down and watch this game was really, after the first quarter, as you said, was never close. The Niners just dominated, pushed them around, and they were kind of at the end of it. The Eagles were really filling up a stat box. They couldn't finish drives. They had turnovers on downs. They had punts. They looked at a sink, and we've seen Swift have these great games this year. I just don't understand why this Philadelphia offense sometimes just completely goes away from him and forgets he's on the team. It makes no sense to me. I've still contended that Hurts is not fully healthy. I think we've seen that for most of the season. He also just has not played really that great, and I think this was another one that, hey, he has some nice stats, but he really didn't make the impact plays when his team needed it. And this Philadelphia team kind of comes back to earth. They got punched in the mouth, and they'll have to get ready for this next week's matchup because they go into Dallas, and we'll talk about that one in a bit.
The big one.
Yeah, the big one.
Big.
Brian, the other game that we wanted to talk about that really is not a marquee game, but I still think is an important game, and actually ended up being a pretty solid game. And that was the Kansas City Chiefs going to Lambeau. They went to play the Packers. You go into this game, the Chiefs 8-3, struggling a little bit, coming off a loss to obviously the Philadelphia Eagles, as we just talked about. And the Packers on a little bit of a win streak, but still 5-6 coming into this game. They especially earlier in the season, they've really underperformed. We were wondering, are they moving off of Jordan Love after the season? We talked a little bit about that in the podcast. And lo and behold, Bri, Packers win this one, get back to 500, 27-19. Contain Mahomes, who had a Hail Mary at the end there. Obviously wasn't able to convert. And the Chiefs offense not able to finish drives, just like we said with Philadelphia. Able to drive the field, gain a lot of yards, get down the field, field goal. Another time, field goal. Like they don't seem at sync. And I've been preaching this on this show all season long. I said, I like the Chiefs. I love Mahomes. He's the best quarterback in football. They are not what you're remembering. They're not even, take out the Tyreek Hill stuff. They're not even the last year Chiefs offense that was number one in the league in point scoring. They are not that team. And when people go, oh, well, they relatively have the same parts. Okay, but every year for any team, it's a microcosm. It does not mean you will replicate it the next season, even if you have relatively the same players. And we're seeing that play out before our eyes. I am not of the belief in any sport. We see it a lot in basketball, but here in football as well, that you could just turn on the switch when the playoffs start. I don't believe in that. And to me, what you are putting on the field or what you are putting on the court, if it has to do with basketball, throughout the regular season, that is going to be reflective of what happens in the playoffs to some degree. And I think there's cause for concern here once again, Bryce. So just focusing on the Chiefs angle of it before we get to the Packers. I mean, they lose in this one again. They got another upcoming matchup here against the Bills. What do you think's going on there in Kansas City?
Yeah, there's definitely a level of concern. I mean, I think even the most optimistic of Chief fans would have to voice some sort of
You'd be
concern with
surprised.
this team. Yeah, I mean, maybe the most optimistic would say, they're just going through the motions in the regular season, playoffs come and they'll be just fine. I'm sure that thought is out there, but I mean, to watch them objectively is to see that something is definitely amiss with this offense. Now, it's a defense that's actually played better than most years, right? Like we talked
Yes.
about this potentially being the best defense Mahomes has ever played with, but offensively, it just hasn't worked the same. And I think, it gets a little trickier. And I'm going to be fascinated to get your pick later on in their game against Buffalo because that's another team that you're not very high on, that you have your concerns about. So that'll be an interesting one. But the Chiefs are going to go into that game without their top running back, Isaiah Pacheco.
Well,
So that means Clyde Edwards-Helaire is set to be the starter at running back, and the former high draft pick first rounder has not really panned out as the lead back there, really lost the job and isn't really a big factor in the offense. So yeah, I'm definitely concerned. I just feel like when you've watched them game in and game out this year, that they just haven't had that same poise, that same connection with Mahomes and his receivers, and it just hasn't added up to the same productivity. I mean, they've had games where they've won solidly, but it hasn't been like Mahomes gone out there and thrown for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. He hasn't had those kind of games this year. I mean, part of it, Kelsey's dealt with a couple nagging injuries throughout the year, so he hasn't quite been at his usual level. Offensive line, maybe not quite as good as it's been in years past. I just feel like it's been a perfect storm that's kind of knocked them down a peg, that when you watch them this year, there hasn't been that same elite dominant level, and I think it's difficult to argue that case, that they're just not quite the same.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things to dig into there because the defense has really carried them all season. Then the last couple weeks now, they've been very shaky, right? Like this defense, all of a sudden now starting to show some cracks, and they've been kind of the reason that this team is at the record that they are. So that's a little bit concerning, right? They're going to get Nick Bolton back in this game here coming off the IR, so hopefully that will give them some kind of a huge boost. And then on the other side, on the offensive side, they've been looking for balance for a while here, and Pacheco looks like he's that guy. He said the last 2 weeks
Yeah.
he's been incredible running the ball, and now, of course, when you have that going, now he's out for this coming week, as you said. So it just they can't seem to get things right. But Brian, it all comes back down to the $500 million man here in Patrick Mahomes. I mean, let's just be honest. Regardless of receivers, regardless of all of this stuff, regardless that they're leading the league in drops, he has not played well. I mean, like we praise guys, especially people like him, the Burrows, the Allens, whoever these guys, these top guys, Lawrence, Hurts, all these guys when they play well. Well, we also have to critique them when they're not playing well. And this has been a very down year for Patrick Mahomes. It's just the truth. It's not hate, and it would be biased to say that it isn't. Like, he's coming off an MVP season, as I said, with relatively the same offensive pieces, and he's nowhere near the production that he was at last season. There's just something off in his game. And hey, guys, listen, guys could have down years, even generational talents. Tom Brady had down years. Like, it is possible. But this is the next phase of his career now where he doesn't have all the weapons, right? Where, everyone talks about last year. Okay, well, last year was just, all right, it was the first year without Tyreek and things like that. Like, maybe it was a perfect storm in that way, and it worked out. Year to year, what is he going to be able to do with these younger pieces as Kelsey gets older, as all these things? And right now, I think there's a transition period that we're going to very much see this year, and it's been something I've been saying pretty vocally on this show for most of the year. So another 21 for 33, 210, a touchdown and a pick. A very pedestrian performance, a critical fourth quarter pick really there, which is very unlike Patrick Mahomes. And it just, they're not getting things done. They're getting yards, but they are not converting the way that this team used to be. And I think it's a big story, and it's a story that I will continue talking about on this show because it's just not what we're used to from particularly that man. On the other side of it, Brian, I did want to switch over to the Packers because they deserve some love, right? They're on about a 3-game winning streak right now. They're very
No pun intended there, or pun intended.
no pun intended, but actually worked out perfectly there. They are the current 7th seed in the NFC playoff picture. The Rams here were the temporary ones for about 6 hours and then got kicked out. And the Chiefs couldn't even help us out there. And so now the Packers are now the 7th seed. They are back in the playoff picture. Jordan Love, great game. 25-36, 267, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Playing with the youngest receiving core in the league. Dobbs, Watson, Wicks, Tucker Kraft. Like, he's spreading it out to these guys. Now, in all fairness, do I think there's a little bit of wildness still in Love's game? Yeah. I mean, there was a couple plays in this game where he's like making some heir apparent throws, right? He's kind of back foot, falling away, tosses it up, should be picked, and somehow Romeo Dobbs catches it, right? Like, those are not plays that I would advise replicating. But it's working right now. He had a brilliant touchdown pass to Christian Watson. I mean, a dime pass that he fit right into single coverage there, and which was actually great coverage by the DB. He's playing really well. He seems like he's finding his mojo. This team is being balanced. The defense has kind of been playing a lot better to what it should be for all the first-round picks on it. And look up, Bri. It's about to be the middle of December, and the Packers are making a strong playoff push here. I mean, what's your thoughts here on the Matt LaFleur-led Packers here, who is undefeated in his Packers career in the month of December, has never lost a game as the head coach?
Yeah, of course he had Aaron Rodgers for most of
Kind of
those
helps.
games. That
Helps a little
certainly helps.
bit.
Right. And even last year when they were not at all the same, but come December, there they were. Rodgers had them winning again. That's just what he does. But yeah, I mean, I had kind of given up on the Packers, honestly, this season. I thought they were a team that we could kind of sweep under the rug and not really have to dissect much the rest of the way. But here they are playing good football again, and worthy of mention for sure. I mean, the game that stands out to me that Love played where I was like, wow, they really might have something here was the Thanksgiving game in Detroit.
Sure.
That was the game where I thought, wow, he really made some good throws, starting with the first play of the game. He hits Watson deep over the middle. He played an outstanding game all the way through. But he really has elevated his game here and has them in the... Now, I don't know that I'm going to pick the Packers as a playoff team. To me, if it came down to the Packers and the Rams, I probably give the edge to the Rams, mostly because of the experience at the quarterback spot and just the trust level that I have with Stafford more than I do Jordan Love. Now, you might feel otherwise, I don't know, but it's definitely close. We saw the two teams play when what was it? Brett Ripien played for the
Yep,
the Rams
unfortunately,
in
yeah.
one of the
Well,
more
that
ugly
that
games.
could cost us. I called it one of the more boring games you'll ever watch on Twitter, and that might cost us the playoffs because we end up with the same record. They have the tiebreaker, so they get in.
Yeah, and that's a game where, and I think you even said it, that if they had
They would
Stafford,
have
they
won.
win absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, the Packers did not play well at all offensively in that game, but they came out on top. But the other thing with this game, and I'm not sure if you were planning on addressing it, but we have to, is the final drive here,
yeah,
the officiating calls, and
yes.
I know
I
we
was
don't
hoping
like
you get
to
to this.
get into the officiating too much, but this was just so egregious to the point where you have the rules analyst on the TV broadcast who is Terry McCauley, and he comes on, and first there's the play with Mahomes where they call a late hit, claiming he was out of bounds when clearly he was a step
Not a penalty.
from the boundary. Right, not a penalty. They call Terry McCauley, and he says, "Yeah, guys, this is absolutely not a foul." So then it's like a couple plays later, bomb downfield to Marquez Valdez Scantling, obvious as day
Clear,
pass interference,
super clear.
and they don't throw the flag. And see, here's the thing about that play is they throw the flag on the most ticky-tack calls with pass interference. And then you get a situation where you have a play that is the definition of pass interference. And I know you can make the argument, well, it's late in the game. You don't want the officials to interfere there. That was a case where they had to because it was a blatant missed call. And I just don't get how they possibly missed that. And then, Terry McCauley comes on there and is like, yeah, guys, this is absolutely pass
Yeah.
interference. And it just shows how weak the officiating is, where you got the rules analyst, the guy who was on the field as an official just a few years ago, and he's vehemently disagreeing with two calls in basically 3 or 4 plays. So, I mean, that was just unbelievable to watch.
Yeah, it's been a mess. I mean, I know every year fans complain about the officiating, but I think most people can agree this year has been particularly egregious. I can't remember it being this bad since we had the replacement refs. Remember those few games where they were terrible
Mm,
when the refs were kind of going through a
oh
little bit of a
my.
contract strike situation there. That's it. And I always remember too the famous, I think it was actually Packers
The
Seahawks game.
fail Mary.
Yeah.
Fail Mary.
So like that's really the last time I could remember the officiating being this bad in this many marquee matchups, in this many standalone games, in just these many egregious calls. It's been really bad. Yeah, the Mahomes one clearly not a foul, and very much so in my mind, and I think in a lot of people's mind, kind of feels like they didn't call the pass interference because it was kind of like a pseudo makeup call. Like it kind of is like, we messed that one up. We'll kind of give it back to the Packers a little bit there. But my argument with that, and I saw a lot of Packer fans on Twitter, I saw people on YouTube, talking about like, oh, well, you got the Mahomes call, so like you owe us this one. Not really. Because like the Mahomes one, it's on the Kansas City side of the field. It's 15 yards. Okay, it's a first down, but they still need a touchdown or a 2-point conversion and still had to go 50 yards to get it. The the pass that should have been a pass interference, that's like a 40 something yard swing, and you have the ball inside like the 5 yard line, first and goal with time. So like it's a massive difference in terms of what that would have done for the game and for what the Chiefs could have done. So that's one point that I saw out there that I wanted to argue against and kind of give my opinion, because I'm like, it's a makeup call, sure, but like you're more speaking, and I've done this before. I've done this before as a Rams fan. Packer fans, you're more speaking as a Packer fan more than what's actually realistic. Those two calls do not equate. They don't make sense at all. And that's very much what it felt like. And it's unfortunate. I mean, I think Mahomes said the right thing after the game where he's just like, you're never looking for the flag. I play to win. I play to make an actual pass that wins the game. That's absolutely the right thing to say. But deep down, he knows, yeah, we should have had that flag. Like, and that really kind of screwed us. We didn't get the best shot that we should have. And, it wasn't surprising. It happened, and I was like, yeah, not shocked. I mean, I find myself, especially in the roughing the passer calls, I find myself looking for them at the end of games. I'm like, all right, the defense made the stop. All right, where's the flag? We know the star QB is
Yeah.
going to get another shot. Like, here we go. Oh, there it is. Like, it happens every single time this season. And,
Right.
it's ruining the integrity of the games.
we're so accustomed to flags on the field that if you ever notice, like you watch an Al Michaels broadcast, like one thing that he says a lot on a play where there's like a pass and you think there might be even the slightest of contact, he'll say, and of course the crowd looks around for a flag and doesn't get one or and does
Yeah.
get one, but I feel like he says that 5 times a game.
Yeah, it's not good. I also too feel like this season there's been more extremely late flags. Like, and I'm talking like sometimes 30 seconds after a play ends. Oh, there the flag comes, and I'm like, I thought that'd be like illegal. Like, how does the flag come that late? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
I feel like that's happened.
Or like after they conference together and
Yeah,
it's like, oh yeah, by the way, there was a
and
flag.
I'm like,
Yeah.
it's some of them, like, especially because you have such high def cameras now, and you have all these rules analysts. You're looking at it multiple angles, and you're being like, where do you see a holding there? Or how did you not call that a holding? Or it's plays that I understand happen in real time. It's not an easy job, but there is sometimes, like, remember the Rams Steeler game, the spot is clear to make of whether he got the first down on fourth down, and they physically move the ball up and end the game and give him the first down. Like, it's right there. Like, what are you looking at? Like, those are things that very much aggravate me, and we saw that in this game. So I am glad you brought it up, but I don't want it to take away from this Packers victory. I still think they deserve it. I think that they outplayed Kansas City all night long. You saw it. They were the more physical team. And hey, look up Cheeseheads. We'll see what happens here for your last month of the season. See if LaFleur could keep up his undefeated streak and see if you get a playoff spot. I mean, hey, you still got to play Minnesota. It's one of the teams you're going to be competing against. And I'm excited to see how it all plays out. Brian, let's talk about a couple little tiny storylines here, maybe some of our favorite teams and such, and then we'll jump into picks for week 14. Um, we didn't feel like talking about the Falcons Jets because it was 13-8 in, again, one of the more boring games. I feel like I say that a lot this season you'll ever watch in your life. But I did want to get your thoughts on this week. It comes out, of course, Tim Boyle started this game. He has now since been cut. Aaron Rodgers, being Aaron Rodgers' friend, doesn't keep you on the team for the whole season. He starts 2 games, plays awful, and is cut. One of them being the Black Friday game. And now, not Trevor Siemian, but good old Zach Wilson has now been tapped as a starter. There were reports. I want to ask your opinion in a second of what you believe of those. Did Zach really say it was multiple sourced? I think it was Diana Rossini had a report saying he kind of was reluctant to go back to the starting spot. And, then, of course, him and Saleh did what you're supposed to do and shot them down, called the reports ridiculous, attacked the reporters,
Yep.
which happens in journalism all the time these days, even though athletes, if you don't want things out there, don't open your mouth. And in my opinion, before I get yours, I think he probably said those things and just looked very weak and awkward when it came out, because that's not what you want to be doing as a professional, even though I 100% get it, because the way the Jets have handled him has been nothing short of a joke. So I can kind of get how he feels. But now he is going to be the starter here on Sunday for your New York Football Jets. Presumably, I would imagine for the rest of the season, barring injury. Bry, the circus that is called the New York Jets. Any thoughts this week?
Uh, yeah, the circus, it just goes on each week. It's like it's the Barnum and Bailey circus. We might as well watch instead of this football team. Yeah, I mean, you outlined it well. They went away from Zach Wilson because he was playing so poorly, and somehow the quarterback situation was even worse because Tim Boyle was awful, had to be benched in the last game because Zach Wilson wasn't even the backup, he was the third string, which shows you that they didn't have any intention of him ever
No,
playing
they were done.
because otherwise, right. But so instead, Boyle is ineffective. So in comes Trevor Siemian. He doesn't exactly show much of anything. So here we are back to. I mean, it really is comical. It really
It
is.
is.
But I've seen, and you might have too. There's been kind of this narrative out there, and there's one player in particular who has a podcast. And now he's an elite player. His name is Micah Parsons. You might have seen this. He decided to go after the Jets' handling of this situation. Now, I don't. He should really just focus on the Dallas Cowboys, who are having a very good season. So there's plenty good there. You don't need to go talking about the Jets. So he can kind of keep his distance. But Um, his thought was that the Jets' handling of Zach Wilson was so bad and basically coming to the defense of Wilson. And I just don't understand that idea from Parsons and from certain fans that's out there that, like, the Jets have done Zach Wilson dirty. I mean, the idea is Wilson has gotten a chance. He has played quarterback. He has been given the opportunity to be the starting quarterback of this team, and he has failed the opportunity. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Yes, he is not the only problem. Of course, he's not the only problem. We know the offensive line is in shambles, and there's myriad issues on the offensive side. But when you watch him play, as we've talked about time and again, and anyone who has eyes can see, he doesn't play the quarterback position at an NFL caliber level. So I don't get this idea that we're feeling bad for Zach Wilson at all. The Jets made him the scapegoat. Well, even if they did make him the scapegoat, it was deserved. It was absolutely deserved. So I get we're back in this situation basically because there's no better option. They tried going away from him, and they don't have any choice in the matter. Does he give him the best chance to win? It's hard to kind of come to those words, honestly. But it just shows that the backup plan was so anemic that that here we are back to where we were. So yeah, I mean it's going to be hard to watch again. They're playing a good team now. I've seen some fans have this belief, and I don't know exactly where it comes from that the Jets are going to have this big effort tomorrow and beat the Texans. I don't see it at all. I mean, the Texans come in, they're playing great football in their own right. They've got a young up and coming player at the quarterback spot, as we know, with CJ Stroud. I think it's going to be another long day at the office for Wilson and the Jets. And I think it's going to be, well, I won't say it yet because we haven't gotten to our picks, but let's just say I don't have a very good feeling about the game tomorrow. As for you,
yeah, one of my favorite things is to watch you or our friend Dill rant about the Jets. I wish you guys hosted your own just Jets only podcast because I think it's hilarious. Yeah, man, listen, I feel for you. I sat through you with a game this year. We kind of do it every year. I've been there with the Rams. I can understand the feeling, but I can't understand it to the degree that you guys do because it seems like this franchise just is allergic to winning. Like they can never make the right decisions. They're the longest drought in any of the four major American sports for the playoffs, as you know. Does not seem like they're getting to it anytime soon. I mean, you could argue next year, but I mean, who knows? There's got to be massive changes for what's going on. Now, do I understand all of the support or sympathy for Wilson? No, but I do understand it a little bit in the sense that you can't bench this guy last year, bench him again this year, make him the third string, then bring him back again. You can't keep doing that. Like, it just, and I can understand how he feels. I think he's been benched 3 times now. Like, at this point, cut the guy. Like, you clearly don't want him. And he has not played well at all. So, why are you forcing him back into the lineup? Can you honestly get up there like as Robert Saleh or Joe Douglas, any of these guys, and go, this guy gives us the best chance to win? You don't believe that. You know you don't believe that. And if you really believe that and it is really the truth, then you have systemically failed as a team that you do not have a better backup than this guy. And as we've talked about in past shows, I believe they have. I know Simeon didn't look good when he came in, but who cares? Put him in. Let him start a full game. Have a full game plan install for the week. Who cares? The season's over. It doesn't matter. I don't understand what they're doing. What's the point of starting Wilson? And I can get a little bit of his reluctance. But yeah, Michael Parsons, his comments. You saw, Aaron Rodgers, his biggest supporter, go on Pat McAfee this week and say the reports were chicken shit and all this stuff. It's like, they're not, though, Aaron. Yeah. Like, they're not. Like, he clearly said that to multiple people. Those reporters, they stake their... This is what I hate when athletes, and they've been doing it more now in the last 5 years, when they'll go after reporters acting like, everything is just for clicks. Like, yes, clicks are how they make their money. But it's also their integrity in journalism. They can't just make up things because one story they make up, their career is over. So, of course, it is sourced, especially these longtime reporters like a Diana Rossini, it's sourced by multiple different things. So to call it just to dismiss it offhand, it always, as I'm sure as you as well, as communication and journalism majors, it just aggravates me because it's like they do all the work to do that, don't then turn around and be like, oh, it means nothing. It's like, how about Zach doesn't open his mouth then and doesn't say that stuff, and then maybe a report won't come out. I mean, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And I agree with your point that to me there was some sort of basis for this, that it didn't just come out of the woodwork that he was hesitant
Yeah.
to play. And you can just kind of see his demeanor. Like he seems like a nice kid, but he also just seems like he's a bit fragile, quite frankly. So I
Yeah.
definitely think there was something to it there. I would not have all been surprised. And like you said, I mean, there is an element that, like, yeah, he's fed up with the franchise and the fact that he's benched and goes from being third string to, this yo-yoing back and forth. I'm sure is not good for him
No,
mentally.
it is not.
But yeah, I definitely think there was something to it. Otherwise, the that story wouldn't have been out there.
It's a tough season there for Jeff fans, man. I'm sorry for you guys and anyone watching. It's been tough. Brian, the final thing I kind of wanted to talk about is I wanted to switch over to the Monday night game, and I wanted to go to the Bengals Jags just real quick, just on the story topic of Trevor Lawrence. We don't really have to talk about the rest of the game, but Trevor Lawrence gets hurt in this game. At first, it looks really, really bad. He kind of slams the turf, tries to get up, throws his helmet off, and you're like, oh God, that looks like an out for the year. Here comes another star quarterback down. Turns out that thankfully it was only a high ankle sprain. It is still questionable whether he will play tomorrow in the game. But even if he misses a week or two, they avoided a major injury. Kind of had the storyline going of like, why didn't he take the cart and he walked out? He said that, oh, it was his decision. And I guess we're to believe that. It just seems like a weird kind of situation went on there. But they avoid disaster. Unfortunately, do not win the game, really, in my mind, because he went out. They were driving with a 28 all, and he goes out, and CJ Beathard got them to overtime, but just wasn't enough, and they kind of lose to the Bengals at home. A devastating loss for the Jags, considering that they won this game. They go to 9-3, and everything going on with the Chiefs and such. They have a chance really at getting a number one seed. And now you look up, and they got the Texans and the Colts breathing right down their neck, only a game out, each of those teams, out of the division itself. So now things all of a sudden got a little bit tight there in Jacksonville. Brian, I just want to get your quick thoughts on the Trevor Lawrence situation there, and kind of a little bit of the projection of how you see the AFC South kind of breaking out here.
Yeah, when the injury happened, I think I thought like you, like anyone who was watching the game, that it looked like it was potentially a significant injury because a lot of times that telltale sign when a player, shows that bit of frustration, whether it's throwing a piece of the equipment or something of that nature, it usually means that they know something is not right, and that usually is an indicator that it's significant. So, very good news that it came out. I wouldn't say clean. I mean, a high ankle sprain is certainly something to deal with,
Right.
but just the fact that he has a chance to play in this game coming up is a majorly a good sign. I mean, he might miss one game and be back next week, or maybe he's on the field tomorrow. I mean, we go into that game tomorrow not knowing who's starting for the Browns or Jacksonville at quarterback, right? The Browns haven't committed to Joe Flacco or DTR at the quarterback spot, so that should be interesting to watch. I do think Jacksonville has to be a little careful, though. I mean, the Texans are coming hard,
Oh, yeah.
and I would definitely favor them over the Colts. Colts have played well. They've been a nice story. Gardner Minshew coming in to replace the injured Anthony Richardson. They played better than I think anybody could have expected. But
Oh,
the
yeah.
Texans are the team led by Stroud, who's just playing great football. Big time win last week over Denver, a game where a lot of picks went the Broncos' way. I know you picked Denver in that game, and the
Mm-hmm.
Texans got another key win. So it'll be interesting down the stretch with that division. But one final thought while we bring up this Monday night game, and you mentioned the Bengals win. I just got to steal a little bit of your thunder here and give my flowers to Jake Browning
Jake Browning,
because how
man.
about the performance
Whew.
that he had? And I think it would be easy to say, oh, Burrow goes down. Okay, dismiss the Bengals altogether, as basically we all did.
We
But
did.
lo and behold, they just may have a capable backup, unlike the Jets. And in comes Jake Browning, right? Nice career in college at Washington. We don't really know what he is as an NFL player, but he comes in this game, he was just lights out. I mean, you
He was
look at the
incredible.
stats, he was 32 of 37 for 354 and a touchdown.
Incredible.
So he's got good weapons around him, as we know, and maybe, just maybe, the Bengals hang in there even with Browning under center.
No, I think it's right that you gave him his flowers. I didn't know if we were going to end up talking about it, but I'm glad we did. He deserves it. Do I know if he can
Yeah.
replicate that week to week? That kind of remains to be seen. But unlike some of the guys in college, Tim Boyle, that did absolutely nothing, he actually had a
Right.
solid college career, as you mentioned, and he deserves it. When you have a competent in this day and age, you need competent backups. QBs, as we're seeing, and the trend's probably not going to stop, are getting hurt more than ever, which is ironic because all the rules are now made to protect them so they don't get hurt, and they seem to get hurt more than ever. So it's just like, it's kind of luck of the draw that's happening. You need solid QBs. And if there's any lesson that we've seen from the Jets to the Vikings situation to the Bengals here, having a competent quarterback, huge in defining how your season can go. So yeah, he deserves his flowers for 1 week, and yeah, we'll see how it breaks out in a pivotal matchup he has coming up here in Week 14. Bry, let's get to some picks here. Week 14. Of course, this week on the bye, the Cards and the Commanders. I believe this is the last week, as I like to announce every season, of byes. So this is it. We had a Thursday night game this week. Both of us were not, as most of America, were not looking forward to this game. It was Patriots-Steelers. The Patriots ended up winning their third game of the year, 21-18. We both got this game wrong in picks. I don't really want to even talk about this game. All I will say is the Steelers are in a lot of trouble within about 4.5 days. They lost to the 2-win Cardinals. And coming into the game, the 2-win Patriots, and now they have dropped to 7-6 and are in a lot of trouble in the AFC wildcard. Listen, I don't want to be this person, but there needs to start being some questions there with Mike Tomlin. I don't want to start being that person, but this is becoming a growing trend. This offenses are absolutely archaic. They're a joke. And man, oh man, when we've seen Mitch Trubisky play some good games in the NFL, he looked putrid on Thursday night. Wow. And on the other side, the Patriots, even in a win, kind of screwing themselves for those draft picks. So I am sure Patriot fans, even though they hold the number 2 spot via the strength of schedule over the Cardinals still, even though they have the same record at the moment, you don't want to be winning games at this time of the year. I mean, the Patriots, you can't do anything for winning games. And I actually think they have a chance of winning a couple more before this season wraps up. Bri, let's go to the 1 o'clock games. Bucks Falcons, we haven't spent a lot of time this season, rightfully so, in the NFC South. It's the worst division in football. It's a joke that a team here is, we say it every year, I feel like there's a division where why do they deserve a home playoff game? Just happens to be 2 years in a row. It's going to be the NFC South. We said that last year with the Bucks, and we're saying it this year with whoever wins. I'm taking the Falcons in this game. They're at home. I mean, to me, if the Bucks lose, it's over. So maybe they play desperate because now they will have 2 losses to Atlanta this season and they're pretty much buried. But I just think the Falcons better defensively, have a little bit more momentum here. They do play well at home, even though it's Desmond Ridder. And I think in a really ugly, boring game, I see the Falcons winning this one.
Yeah, I kind of see it the same way. I mean, to me, this game will come down to a field goal at the end, and I kind of lean toward the Falcons here. I think they're a little bit better. I picked them a couple weeks ago in that game against the Saints. That kind of moved them into the top spot in that division. At this point, I think they are the favorite. The Saints have just been too up and
Who
down
knows?
this
Who
year, and
cares?
who knows what to make of it. Right. So yeah, I'm going Falcons by field goal.
Whoever's going to win this division is going to be the exact same thing as last year. They're going to get annihilated in the wild card round. Who even cares? It doesn't even matter. The Ravens and the Rams face off. The Rams go visit the Ravens in the classic East Coast rare 1 o'clock game here for the Rams. I'm taking the Ravens. Good win last week for the Rams. It was close for most of 3 quarters, and then they kind of broke away there in the fourth quarter there. And then with a late touchdown, they got a safety to end the game. They played well. Joe Flacco started hot, and then he kind of faltered off there. Great win for the Rams. They're playing well. Stafford last 3 weeks in this 3-game winning streak has looked fantastic. Kyron Williams back clearly changes this offense. Puka, if it wasn't for C.J. Stroud, to me, Puka is the rookie of the year. It's just going to go to, of course, the quarterback as well as CJ has played. But I don't think this game is going to be as bad as it was the last time they met with Lamar Jackson starting, where it was 45-6 on Monday night. Of course, the Rams a couple of years ago in Baltimore won a close 20-19 game, but that was with Tyler Huntley at the time. I think the Ravens do win this one by about 2 touchdowns, and yeah, it's just a game the Rams have to get through, get to some more winnable games here to end the season. So I'm taking the Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens have been very tough at home against some teams that, have been pretty good, like the Lions. You look at that game, you thought it was going to be good going in, totally one-sided in Baltimore's favor. I think they're going to win. I think the Rams find a way to keep this game close. I think it'll be a good game all the way through. I think we'll look up in the fourth quarter, and it will be a game. But in the end, I think the Ravens, with that edge on defense, particularly at home, like they've
It's
played
great.
lights out on all levels. So my pick is Baltimore.
Yeah, Lamar would only one loss in his entire career against an NFC team. Spread about 7.5 right now. Pretty sure the Ravens will cover that one. Lions Bears. I'm taking the Lions here. I know this game got really close. The Lions had to have some kind of miracle fourth quarter comeback the last time at home, but I think last week they righted the ship. Got a little bit uncomfortable again there against the Saints, but they were able to hold fast. I think their weapons are clicking at all cylinders. How about my boy Sam Laporta, young tight end, staking his claim as Travis Kelce and George Kittle get older and have injuries? This guy, one day in a couple of years, you could look up and go, this might be the best tight end in football. I love this kid. He plays great. You see Jameson Williams coming on as well. We obviously know what St. Brown offers for this team. Gibbs and Montgomery. I really like this Lions team. I don't know if they'll be a Super Bowl contender. I don't think they're that. But this is a step in the right direction. And against the lowly Bears, I think they're going to win this one.
Yeah, Sam Laporta out of the Tight End University, as it's called, with the University of Iowa,
Feels like it.
where he played his college ball, and he has had a terrific rookie season. They've got a nice array of weapons, as you outlined there. And the Bears, although they have kind of perked up ever so slightly in the last couple weeks, they had that Monday night win against Minnesota where Josh Dobbs was just
Yeah,
awful,
that was terrible.
and the Bears have played better in recent weeks, but I think the Lions find a way to win this one by double digits. I do.
Interesting game. Colts Bengals here. The 7-5 Colts coming into the 6-6 Cincinnati Bengals. We just talked a little bit about Jake Browning. Both of these teams vying for a wild card spot. The Colts vying for the division spot there with the Texans and the Jags as well. Something I would have never predicted, especially when Anthony Richardson went down, and then we know our thoughts here when Joe Burrow went down. We thought the Bengals were done. I'm taking.
Yeah.
I've kind of went back and forth on this game here. I've kind of who I'm picking. I am gonna take the Cincinnati Bengals. I actually like what Jake Browning has been doing here, and I think at the end of the day, you know how much I like that defense, and the Bengals they got more weapons. Jonathan Taylor out for the Colts here. Jake Browning doesn't have to throw 350 yards. Throw for 210. Run the ball with Mixon. Get those, the passes out to Higgins and Chase. I think they'll be fine. I think it's going to be like a 2017 game. But give me the Bengals to win another one.
I agree. And, I think this game, when you looked initially, the line was in favor of Indy. And now, as I look at it, it's gone in favor of Cincinnati, where they are now a 2-point favorite. Well, listen, I gave my flowers earlier in the show to Jake Browning. I mean, I can't go against him now. I would have to take away the flowers I just gave him. So, yeah, I'm going Cincinnati here. T. Higgins back in the lineup wasn't a huge factor in his first game back, but he'll work his way, getting more comfortable coming off the injury. Chase, is always capable of having an enormous game, mixing out of the backfield. They've got all the ingredients. Like, they have a solid
For
team.
sure.
It's not dependent on the quarterback, where if they get competent play, they can still potentially be a playoff team. I think they showed that with how they played last week. The defense, it always kind of does the dirty work. That's kind of what I think about with this defense. It's an underrated unit, as we've talked about. I think they can force Gardner Minshew into a mistake or two and find a way to get this win at home.
Jags Browns, another interesting game here. Two teams vying for the playoffs. As you mentioned earlier, the Browns still undecided, and I looked it up even as recently as a couple hours ago. Going to be a game time decision there. Is it DTR? Is it Joe Flacco? We have no idea who's going to be starting. Honestly, I put in Joe Flacco again. I think the offense, especially in that first half, looked better with him at quarterback, and he had a connection there with Elijah Moore. Given the status again also of another QB on the side, Trevor Lawrence, he's going to be a game time decision. We have no idea. So this is really a kind of a toss-up game of who we're picking at this moment because we have no idea who's even starting a quarterback. I can't remember in the history of our 4 years that we didn't know either quarterback less than, 13 hours before this game is going to start. A very odd situation here. I'm going to take the Browns just because I have a feeling Trevor Lawrence is not going to play in this game, and I think it's going to be C.J. Beathard. And I think at home in the dog pound, this defense is going to, which has not played well in the last couple weeks. I think they're going to have kind of a tour de force, kind of like old in the beginning of the season performance against the Jags, and I see the Browns handing the Jags their second straight loss. Give me Cleveland.
Yeah, I'm with you here. I don't think we've had a disagreement yet to this point, so we'll probably get one at some point through the picks. But yeah, we're in agreement here. I'm taking Cleveland. I think particularly at home, that defense is going to be fired up to play its A game. Lawrence, majorly questionable. I agree. He's probably going to miss this game. I think it would be the smart thing to hold him at least for one. On the Browns side too, not only like the quarterback question, but number one receiver Amari Cooper is going to be out of the lineup. So you mentioned Elijah Moore, of course, the former Jet draft pick who started his career with a flourish and then completely fizzled. While he's now the number one wideout with Cooper out. So I think the Browns find a way to make enough plays here with the running game and get the win.
Panthers Saints, game that nobody cares. Saints still in playoff contention there. They need to win. I believe they'll win. But I won't be surprised if we come back on the show and the Panthers won their second game of the season. Like, I really won't. Like, I have no respect for what's going on there. Carr looks like he's trending not to play. He has like 3 different injuries. It looks like it's going to be Winston / Taysom Hill. I mean, the Saints are a mess. Dennis Allen is more than likely getting fired when the season ends. And the Panthers are obviously the worst team in football. But give me the Saints in probably a 17-10 game. I mean, if you're watching this game and you're not a fan of either of these teams, what are you doing? Like, just don't even watch this game.
Yeah, I go back to your original line when you said nobody cares, and immediately I thought of the former radio host Mike Francesa. Nope, nobody cares.
Yeah.
At this game, nobody cares. But anyway,
exactly
the car I did see it, and it's like not often that you look at a report. It's like concussion, shoulder, and something else, like all 3 injuries. But I actually did see that he was expected to suit up. So you might just want to look into that because I believe he is expected to play, which makes you feel better about the Saints pick than if you were watching Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill duke it out.
That's crazy.
So he is going to go, and Alvin Kamara has been a difference maker. I feel like it hasn't really gotten talked about. He missed the start of the season. He's had his off the field issues, but he's actually been like one of the best running backs in the league, like his old form. So I think he makes the difference here, and the Saints find a way to beat the lowly Carolina Panthers. So you talk about a team that's in disarray, the coach fired, and an awful rookie year from Bryce Young. I mean, nothing has gone right there. Nothing.
Yeah. Carr also dealing with rib and shoulder injuries, his throwing shoulder. Why he's even starting given the season that he's also had. Well, I'm actually shocked to see that. That came through a few hours ago. Good catch on that. That is, God, it's still going to be a terrible game. The Texans and the Jets play the final 1 o'clock game, and let's talk about another awful game. I'm picking the Texans here. I have no faith in Zach Wilson. All that, like you talked about, kind of like hoorah, they're gonna come out and show them. Don't believe that at all. Think the Texans are gonna just drub them. Probably 30-10. Don't think this game's gonna be close.
Oh boy, 30-10. That would be another yikes performance in a season full of them. I mean, I said I basically foreshadowed it. I think the Texans are going to win. I mean, I've been picking against the Jets for a bunch of weeks in a row, and
And
unfortunately,
you're
I've been
right.
right every one. I don't want to be, but that's just the way it's been with this losing streak. And I've seen people say that there's a chance that they close the season on, a 9 or 10 game losing
Yeah,
streak, that they
probably.
don't win a game the rest of the way. The interesting thing will be last week of the season
Don't
they go
don't
to
do it.
New England.
Don't do it. Don't
They
do it.
never ever
Don't
beat
do it.
New England. So I'm just saying, who knows? But for this game against the Texans, I mean, Houston's just head and shoulders better. They're the confident team right now. The Jets are just in disarray on every level with the offense. It's amazing the defense has played as well as it has,
Yeah,
in,
give them
in
that.
watching this offense play on the other side. But they have come to play every week and really play great football. It's a testament to them and the defensive coaching staff has done a great job. But yeah, unfortunately, the pick is Houston.
That's why I believe Robert Saleh doesn't deserve to be fired because his side of the ball's played well all year. So I
Yeah,
think he deserves.
exactly.
To me, if you can fire anyone, you fire Joe Douglas. I mean, what a joke that's been. Brian, we switch over to the 4 o'clock games. It starts at 4:05. The Vikings Raiders. Vikings well in playoff contention here. Really need to win this game. They've been stumbling a little bit, and the Raiders technically, mathematically, are still in the playoffs, even though I don't think either of us believe that they have a prayer. Give me the Vikings. Dobbs is going to be starting this game. There was a little bit of talk whether he would or not this week, but he's getting the nod to possibly start his final game for the Vikings if he does not play well. They're also getting JJ, Justin Jefferson, back in this game for the first time in a number of weeks. So give me the Vikings to win this one in Vegas.
Yeah, Jefferson coming back is obviously a huge
Huge.
boost for a player of his caliber. Maybe he has a little bit of rust, but I'm actually going the other way
Really?
here. This is our first disagreement. The Raiders, since the coaching change, the firing of Josh McDaniels, I feel like have been a lot more spirited in the way
It's
they
fair.
played. I mean, we know they've beaten the lowly local teams with the Giants and Jets, but they were competitive in that game at Miami. Game against Kansas City, they're actually up 14 nothing before the game got away. So they clearly are playing better. I think at home here, coming off the bye, I just don't trust the Vikings with Josh
That's
Dobbs
fair.
under center. I know it's been a nice story. He's had some good games. It was all well and good. They traded for him, and he basically came in with no knowledge of the playbook and looked serviceable. But that really kind of ran out. My last image of that game against the Bears, I was like, "Woo, this is not good."
No, that was bad. That was
So
awful.
necessarily what you're getting out of Aiden O'Connell on the other side, but I like the weapons around him. Raiders at home, I think they'll find a way to win a close game here.
Seahawks of the Niners. We just saw these two teams play not too long ago on Thanksgiving night. Seahawks thoroughly outplayed at home at that time in Seattle. Really, the only reason it was even a tiny bit close, and it wasn't even that close, was Brock Purdy had a pick six in that one, but they still won by about like 18 or 20 points, if I remember correctly. Niners are going to win this game again. Seahawks are still a little banged up. Doesn't look like Kenneth Walker is going to start in this game. Gino, coming off his best game of the year in the loss on Thursday night the previous week to Dallas, but I expect him to play a little better, but this San Francisco team, as we talked at the top of the podcast, they are best team in football. They're running red hot. Think they're going to win this one pretty easily. Give me the Niners.
Well, another one to look up there on the handy dandy computer. I think there's a chance that Geno Smith misses this game. He popped up on the injury report. I saw something about Drew Lock potentially playing in this game, so we'll get that verified.
Game
Either
time.
way,
Yeah.
my pick is San Francisco. So Geno is a game time decision.
Game
So
time
yet
for
another.
with a groin. You're being our injury reporter this week. I appreciate that.
It's my contact with Adam Schefter, that helps in these situations. But Yeah, I mean, I'm taking the Niners. We talked about them earlier that they're just back to playing at their best. So whether it's Geno Smith, whether it's Drew Lock, I think them being at home here with their full array of offensive weaponry will overwhelm the Seahawks for the second time in short order.
Yeah, if it's Drew Lock, this game might be a 30, 40 point game. Jesus. An interesting game here, 425. Maybe not as interesting as it normally would have been, but under these circumstances, still pretty interesting. Bills visit Arrowhead. They go to Kansas City. Kansas City not looking great. Has lost what 3 of 5. Has lost a couple in a row here now, and now you got the Bills, where we've talked at length about their up and down season and kind of, and now the reports. We won't spend really much time on it, but I'm sure you saw the reports, the whole Sean McDermott story this week, which was
It was just downright
yeah,
bizarre.
bizarre. Some people go, oh, it was an attack on his character. It was a hit piece. Well, it had like 25 sources. Again, don't say things if you don't want them reported. That's kind of my thoughts there. But I know there's both sides to that. But a very interesting game here. Bribe, you hinted at you were interested in what I would pick later in the show. I'm taking the
Yeah.
Buffalo Bills. I
Wow.
think regardless of all of kind of the little bit of hysteria that they had this week, I don't think it's enough to throw them off kilter. They are fighting for their playoff life. They cannot go below 500 here. And Kansas City, even though they can't, quote unquote, you don't want to take any loss at this point of the season, they can't afford a loss right now. No one is catching them in their terrible division. I think the Bills are going to play aggressive. I think they're going to play to win. And I just think that the Bills, we've seen, have the capability this year to score 30 or more points. I don't think the Chiefs have that capability right now. So give me Buffalo in a close one to win this one.
Yeah, we're in agreement here.
Wow.
I'm
Okay.
I'm taking the Bills. The line is only like the Chiefs to be a point favorite, and I
Yeah, I
think at
saw
one
one and a
point it was
half.
2.5 or 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that tells you that the money is coming in on the Bills side of things, and I think rightfully so. I mean, we've seen Josh Allen, his career in this matchup, he plays big time football
Yeah.
against the Chiefs. I mean, even in that game that was the loss, that epic game in the divisional round of the playoffs. I mean, he played a
He's
phenomenal
incredible.
game. Four touchdowns to Gabe Davis in that game. He was just at his very best. So I think we're gonna get his best and the Bills' best in what has been, as you said, very up and down nature of their season. I don't see them dipping below 500. I think they're going to find a way to win this game, get to 7-6. And a couple weeks ago I said that I still felt that this team will make the playoffs. Well, they're going to have to win a game like this in order to have a chance because there's still some. They've got the Cowboys, I think, next. So
Yes.
there's you had the Eagles just recently, so they've had a gauntlet of
They
a
have.
schedule here lately. Another tough one, obviously. I mean, the Chiefs, even not at their peak, is obviously a tough game, particularly at Arrowhead. I think they're going to be up for it, put up an A performance, and win this game.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they can make the playoffs given their schedule, but I just think this is kind of the right time, the right matchup, the way they're catching Kansas City, that they're going to win this game. Broncos Chargers. The Chargers, even though again, like the Raiders, mathematically in the playoffs, they're dead, they're over. And the Broncos very much, even though they're only one game better. They are very much in that wild card playoff contention there. I'm taking Denver. I think I picked them last week. They were pretty physical, but Russell Wilson kind of having really his first bad game of the year, at least the first bad game he's had in about 2.5 months, really since probably that Dolphins game. I'm taking the Broncos to win here just because I think they're the more physical. I think they're the better team, and the Chargers. I mean, 6-0 last week to New England. I mean, we can talk all we want about all the problems the Chargers have. Herbert, you have to score more than 2 touchdowns two field goals against a 2-win team. It's just not good enough. And I've been very disappointed in that entire operation over there in Los Angeles. Give me the Broncos to win.
I echo so many of those thoughts. Absolutely, it's just been so frustrating, maddening to watch a team that year after year you want to believe this is going to be the year. This is what we said at the start of this year. They made the change at offensive coordinator. We were going to see the best of Justin Herbert. early on, he had his moments, he had a couple good games, but lately it just has been flat out not good enough. And I don't want to hear last week about the weather being bad. We know it was an issue in quite a few places. Pittsburgh, MetLife Stadium, of course, and Foxborough as well. Even in the worst of conditions, do better than 2 field goals against the lousy Patriots. I mean, come on. That's just pathetic. Like, I know it was a win, but you come out of that game, it was like, this is not good. And yeah, I'm with you. I'm taking the Broncos. I think they clearly are the better team despite last week's loss. You just look at the coaching matchup. You got Sean Payton on one side, and you got Brandon Staley on the other. I mean, that's a mismatch on the sidelines, if there ever was one. We know Sean Payton has really turned this team around after a dreadful start, talking about Denver loss last week, a setback that I think they'll recover from. I've seen enough there, improved play from Russell Wilson, the defense playing better. I think they find a way to win this divisional matchup.
The Sunday night game is very tantalizing. It's the Philadelphia Eagles at 10-2 going into the Dallas Cowboys at 9-3. The Cowboys, I believe, something crazy around like a 14-game home winning streak right now. And like these games, they're scoring like 30 or more, or 35 or more points, like something insane of the way that they are playing right now. Philly kind of licking its wounds, as we talked about against the Niners from last week. I'm taking the Cowboys on this one. I just think, again, they're catching the Eagles at the right time, much like Buffalo is catching Kansas City. And I just think the way that they play at home, they are rocking on all cylinders. They played a great game not less than a month ago up in Philadelphia, and they could have won that game. I think they get the Eagles this time around and take a firm grasp for the moment of the NFC East.
Yeah, and that loss that you reference is the only loss they've had in like the last, what, 6 or 7 weeks. I mean, you talk about an offense that is really in gear right now. And I remember we had a conversation about this team about a month and a half ago. I can't pinpoint exactly what week, but we both were voicing our concerns over this offense.
Mm-hmm.
And now you look up and I mean Mike McCarthy's got them playing at just an all-world level. Because I remember we had the conversation, it centered around Dak Prescott, and I was kind of vehemently saying he's not more than an average quarterback. That's just the way I felt. I felt like
It's true.
we've seen him play for enough years, had enough of a sampling that that's what he was. Well, feels like since then, I mean, you got people talking him in the MVP race, and rightfully so, because he has just played lights out. Now, the one thing is, he hasn't beaten a winning team, which is kind of mind
Yeah.
boggling that all in this streak, it's all been against lesser competition. But there's no denying the way they played on the offensive side. I mean, Dak has got it all rolling. We talked about the need for another weapon to kind of step forward in this offense, and it's your former Ram, among other teams. Brandon Cooks
Yep.
has really made a big impact on this offense to go along with CD Lamb, who just feels like every week is breaking a new record. I mean, he's just been off the charts good. The tight end lost Dalton Schultz in free agency. Wondered could they replace him? That was a pretty good player. Well, Jake Ferguson,
He's played well.
really good, especially lately. So I just think all their weapons are rolling right now, and Dak is playing the best football of his career by a wide margin. I think the Cowboys win this game and win fairly convincingly, just with the way they've been going of late.
Yeah, it's also, I think you hinted the point there too. This is a huge game for the Cowboys because in 9 wins, they haven't beaten a winning team. I'm telling you, Brian, we come on next week and they lose this game to Philly, who is kind of stumbling right now, and you could argue hasn't had this, amazing game all season. There's gonna be a lot of questions there in Dallas, regardless of them being 9-4 if they lose this game. They have to prove to themselves and the football world that they can beat a top level team. They need to do it. 2 Monday night games, Bry, which I don't remember this ever happening. You could correct me if I'm wrong. This late in the season, and the games are at the exact same time at 8:15.
Yeah.
I hate when sports leagues do this because we physically, unless we have two different TVs side by side, which people do in their house, I don't. You can't watch both of these games. You have to flip back and forth. I just don't understand why. I guess it's just like they figure the games don't have a lot of standalone value on their own right, so they they put them together. I have no idea. But the Titans and the Dolphins are the first game at 8:15 there, taking place down in Miami. I'm taking the Dolphins. We've talked many times. We saw it last week against the Commanders. They beat the crap out of bad teams. I expected to run up the score here on the Titans and for that to be a semi blowout.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, last week we kind of both thought they would beat Washington soundly, and that's just what they did. They won by 30 points, put up over 40, as they have a number of times. There's still questions about the Dolphins. How will they fare against the best teams? Early on, they kind of proved when they got matched up against the better teams, they didn't play that well. So it'll be interesting come playoff team, but there's no doubt that they're going to be there. I mean, that offense has just been so dynamic. Tua playing well, Tyreek Hill. I mean, every week it's just been insane. I don't know if you caught this that Wes Welker, who has some kind of position on the coaching staff of Miami, I think it might be assistant receiver coach or something like that. He said that Hill he believes is better than Randy Moss. So that was quite a
I didn't
statement.
see
I don't
that.
know that I'm there yet. Yeah, it
Yeah, I'm
was an
not there
interesting
yet.
take, and obviously Welker knows Moss very well. They were teammates. They played with each other for a
Right.
number of years, and now he's got to see Hill up close and personal coaching him. So yeah, to have that take, I really thought that spoke volumes. Not necessarily sure that I agree with it, but it just shows, the level that he is at as a wide receiver right now. It's scary. So yeah, I think the Dolphins. I mean, against an overmatched Tennessee team, this game will not be close.
Yeah, so I forget who it was, but it was a prominent person. It was a former athlete, a NFL athlete, that gave their top five receivers this week, and they had Antonio Brown in there, which, like, yeah, he had a great number of years, but all time, I don't know about that, regardless of his off the field stuff. And then Santana Moss was in the top five, which I
What?
thought was ludicrous, and no Randy Moss. So
Wait a
these
minute. They must have been thinking Randy and
I
put
don't
the
know.
wrong
I
name.
have
I mean,
no
that's the only
idea, but
explanation here.
it was a very odd list. I got to look up and see who that was. But yeah, the receiver talk of top five seems to be popping up this week all over Twitter. The other final game of the week and of Monday night is the other 8:15 game of the Packers and the Giants. I'm taking the Packers here. I know the Giants have played a little bit better in the last couple weeks. They're showing some fight. I do appreciate that. But the Packers, I think, are just on a roll. I think they're just overall just a better team. I don't think this is going to be a blowout or anything. I think it'll be a closer game, but give me the Packers to win this one.
Yeah, you know what? We're gonna have another disagreement
Okay.
here because I am going with the New York Football Giants. I
God
think
bless.
they're deserving of a little bit of love, and we know love plays on the other side there with the Packers, but I'm gonna spotlight some love for the Giants. Not overdo it because the reality is they beat the Patriots in Washington over a 2 week stretch and they had their bye week in there too. But the story with Tommy DeVito is kind of a fun
Tommy.
one, right? Like nobody gave him any chance to be anything. I mean, the first time we saw him, they basically didn't let him throw the football,
No.
and so you thought basically he wasn't even as good as Zach Wilson. Well, then they allowed him to throw the ball, and
He's
he's
not bad.
actually been like okay,
Yeah.
right? And under circumstances that aren't the best. I mean, the offensive line still not very good. Weapons around him not very good. They haven't had Darren Waller through this stretch, so yes, they have had Barkley come back, but circumstances far from ideal, and he has played like decently well, like enough to put a mention in for him. So it's funny that just when the fan base has decided, okay, it's time to lose games, now the Giants are winning games. So isn't it funny how that works out?
Of
I mean,
course.
I'm not one who ever believes that you should be tanking or losing games for a higher draft pick. I know there's the idea that you want the franchise quarterback, and I get that, but to me, you got to always give your best. I don't want to see my team, trying to lose. That's not what sports is about. It's about you know, it's about winning. That's the name of the game. So I'm not for the tanking philosophy, and I don't think Brian Daboll is either. I think he wants to win as many games as he can. I think Tommy DeVito the same, and I think the Giants turn this into a little 3-game winning streak just when their fans want the losses to pile up. So sorry, fan base, but I think they're going to win it.
Yeah, it's tough because you need a franchise quarterback to really compete in this league, especially to win Super Bowls. But it's also like the hardest sport to really tell guys to tank in. You just can't. I mean, we saw it last year, right, with the way the end of the season broke kind of with the Lovie Smith Texans. They won a game at the end of the year that cost them the first overall pick and moved them to the second overall pick. Obviously worked out for them, but that ended up being a situation there. And yeah, the Giants, no chance in the playoffs. But hey, this Tommy DeVito story, a little bit of fun, and I'll make this promise to you and Giant fans out there if they're listening or watching. He's going to get his flowers next week if he wins this game, old Tommy DeVito, from me. So we'll see how that breaks out. If anyone's interested, the Monday Night Games, the way they break down Titans-Dolphins, you can catch that over on ESPN, and the Packers and the Giants, they will be on ABC proper. So you can check your local listings to see what channels those are on. I hate when they make them the exact same time. It's ridiculous. I don't even know why we're having 2 Monday night games this late in the season, but that's a me problem. So I digress. But guys, that's our podcast here for the week here. First and 10. This was week 14 of the NFL season. We of course did week 14 picks, and we recapped week 13, which week 13 will probably be the one in the title. We'll see what I make the title this week. I kind of have a couple ideas. If you stayed this long on the podcast, we always greatly appreciate you. If you've listened or watched this long, that means you're a true fan, or you're really bored at work, and that's why you're listening to this. So maybe that'll give you a good chuckle, but we appreciate all of that support. Let us know down below your favorite teams, kind of where they're going, their direction, what you want to be going on, your picks for the week, and any other thoughts and predictions you have, especially as we get here for the MVP race. Love to hear your thoughts in the comments below on that as well. Bri, before we get out of here for week 13 and the picks for 14, any other final thoughts for the people?
Yeah, I think just quickly, because you've probably seen it too over the last week or two, a couple notable retirements from players that we watched a lot of through the years. I feel like during our generation of football, these are two kind of signature
Mm-hmm.
players recently deciding to officially hang it up, and that would be one, Deshaun Jackson, the highlight reel wide receiver, as many years with the Eagles, and then kind of bounced around. Well, of course, he had a stint with your Rams. He was in Tampa,
Got a ring.
Washington, the Raiders. Yeah. And I mean, you talk about a fun player to watch. I mean, his explosiveness and his ability to get, deep plays, big plays in the passing game, not matched by very many. I mean, he was just an electrifying player in his day. And then the other one was the longtime kicker, Robbie Gould.
Yeah.
All those years with the Chicago Bears, finished out with the 49ers. Reliable, year in and year out, just one of the best for many years. So when I saw those two recently, I thought good to note for two players that we certainly saw a lot of and that made a big impact on the game, officially calling it a career. So great careers by both of them.
No, good proper shout outs there. Watched Robbie Gould a lot, especially when he was with the 49ers and seeing him kick many field goals against my Rams. And yeah, Deshaun Jackson, of course, holds the record for the most, I think, 60-yard touchdowns. I think something like 15 or something like that he has in his career, something crazy. An electrifying player, a lot of fun. I mean, those couple of years where it was Vic, LaShawn McCoy, Deshaun, Macklin, I
Yep.
mean, just where I think Brent Selleck was on the team at the time. Like those,
Yep.
those
Yep.
were times for the Philadelphia Eagles. Those were a lot of fun. And Giant fans, turn away, put this on mute. I will always remember Miracle of the Meadowlands #2. I remember exactly where I
Absolutely.
was when that happened. That comeback,
Do you remember the punt? Do you remember the Giants punter?
Matt Dodge. Yeah, yeah.
Got it.
I
Bang.
remember it. He was a terrible punter. He was barely in the league because he was so bad. And I never forget watching that. And I remember being like, "Why are you punting?" Everybody, because I was with Giant fans.
Yep.
Why
Yep.
would you even be punting in his direction? And he drops the ball and picks up one of the more famous calls you will have in the last about 15 years or so. And sometimes I'll admit, even as a non-Eagles fan, I will, if that highlight ever pops up in the algorithm, I'll watch that whole comeback because it was just something else. So yeah, great career for those two gentlemen. Of course, Deshaun getting a ring there with the Rams, even though he only played about 4 games. But that's kind of how the rules work there for the 2021 season. But hats off to both of them. I wish them the best in retirement. We both do. But yeah, guys, great way to end that off. Thanks, Bri. Of course, all our socials and all that other lovely stuff is in the description down below. So please give that a check and maybe a follow. You can see us complain about our favorite sports teams and find out what else is up to in our personal lives in kind of our social media accounts. So if you will, and if you want to, they're there for you to choose to click on. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends if you be so kind. And until next week of First and 10, guys, thanks for watching.